Water defined survival in Operation Desert Storm more than any weapon system or battlefield maneuver. In the open Arabian Peninsula, temperatures soared well above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity vanished, and dehydration could cripple a unit long before the enemy did. The U.S. military moved enormous amounts of water through supply trucks, bladders, and purification points, but the desert consistently outpaced logistics. When resupply faltered or convoys stalled, troops faced a simple truth: either improvise or risk severe dehydration. What emerged were 7 unconventional, often forbidden, and now entirely unacceptable sources of water that soldiers turned to when official supplies ran dry. These methods belong to a very specific time, place, and circumstance. They are valuable today only as historical insight into the desperation and ingenuity that Desert Storm demanded. In the extreme temperature swings of the Arabian Desert, condensation formed inside the metal fuel tanks of Humvees, Bradleys, and deuce-and-a-half trucks. Soldiers quickly learned that cracking the drain plug on the lowest point of the fuel tank could release a small layer of water that naturally separated from the fuel. No one pretended this was clean. Vehicles often contained trace diesel, JP8, or contaminants. But in emergency situations, soldiers let the water settle in canteen cups and skimmed off any surface film before boiling. It was a forbidden method because of the risk of chemical contamination, but in situations where heat casualties were rising, the alternative was worse. The M1 Abrams and M2 Bradley produced condensation as part of their cooling and electronic systems. In the Gulf's brutal climate, this moisture would drip down the undercarriage or pool near the rear access plates. Crews and infantry riding with them learned to place cups or MRE bags under these points to catch the runoff. Regulations discouraged using maintenance system condensation as a drinking source for obvious sanitary reasons. Still, during long pushes, especially in the 24 to 48-hour armored drives into Kuwait, this moisture kept soldiers functional. Tank crews often say it tasted metallic, warm, and faintly oily, but it was water in a desert that offered none. Wadis, dry riverbeds carved by rare seasonal rains, were tempting but dangerous. To the untrained eye, they were bone-dry and lifeless, but beneath the surface, they sometimes concealed pockets of damp sand. Soldiers who had trained in desert operations knew that digging down 12 to 18 inches in shaded sections of a wadi could reveal moisture-rich soil. They then used t-shirts, shimaws, or even gauze bandages to wring out moisture, collecting the drips in canteen cups. The trick produced muddy, mineral-heavy water that required purification tablets. This method was discouraged because disturbing wadis could trigger collapses and because the water often carried bacterial risks. But in the middle of the Kuwaiti desert, soldiers took the risk when resupply lagged behind maneuver units. Modern soldiers recoil at this idea, and for good reason, but in 1991, with vehicles running constantly in extreme heat, coolant systems produced condensation in the overflow reservoirs. In some cases, older vehicles had mixed coolant systems, where water formed part of the mixture. Soldiers desperate for moisture sometimes siphoned off the top layer after long periods of engine idling, when trace antifreeze had settled out. They then boiled the water, strained it through cloth, and treated it heavily. Commanders fiercely forbade this because ingesting coolant can be lethal, but for soldiers stranded during breakdowns or lost convoys, the line between forbidden and necessary blurred quickly. Large fuel bladders, massive rubber tanks used to supply mechanized units, were surrounded by containment berms. After rare desert fog events or nighttime condensation, small amounts of water collected at the base of the bladder or in the berm depression. Maintenance crews often discovered this standing water before morning refueling operations. Soldiers on extended missions occasionally collected this runoff filtered sand with cloth and boiled it. This was explicitly prohibited. Containment berms were considered chemically contaminated zones, but the desperation for hydration sometimes overrode regulation. The Arabian desert produces a surprising early morning dew due to sharp nighttime temperature drops. Soldiers learned that parking vehicles facing a consistent direction created large, cool metal surfaces that would choke with condensation before sunrise. Mechanized units collected this dew by scraping hoods, roof plates, and cargo bay doors with canteen cup rims. The yield was tiny, perhaps just a few ounces, but it was cold, clean, and reliably produced every morning. This wasn't forbidden for safety, it was discouraged because officers didn't want troops relying on unpredictable moisture cycles. Still, it became an unofficial ritual in certain units. This is, the one method no soldier spoke about openly. Chemical latrine units used in rear logistics setups had internal freshwater used to prime pumps and maintain suction systems, and when badly dehydrated troops reached these camps, some quietly accessed this internal freshwater tank, never the waste chamber, but the sealed service reservoir that fed the flush mechanism. Officially, these reservoirs were not intended for drinking due to bacterial risk and poor sanitation control. But, they held potable-grade water before entering the system, and soldiers on the brink of collapse sometimes took the chance. No regulations encouraged this. Every regulation forbade it. But survival, well, it rarely obeys policy manuals. Today's military relies on advanced logistics water production units and strict hydration protocols. The desperation-driven methods of Desert Storm belong to a specific era. A battlefield with extreme heat but primitive personal hydration systems. Early stages of the Camelback philosophy frequently stalled convoys during sandstorms. Rapid, deep mechanized thrusts that outran water supply lines and units spread thin over enormous distances. The Gulf War demanded improvisation because, honestly, no one had fought a modern, mechanized campaign in such an environment before. These survival hacks are relics, dangerous, improvised, and unrepeatable under current doctrine, but they remain a testament to how soldiers adapted to one of the harshest battlefields on Earth using nothing but what they carried and what the desert offered.